Hey movie junkies, welcome back to Twin Flicks, where we always here celebrating the magic of movies and most importantly, physical media with you guys. But today we're going to take a look at and compare the previous Blu-ray to the new 4K UHD of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which comes at us from Vinegar Syndrome with a new 4K restoration taken from the original 35mm negative, forming a new native 4K DI with the extra benefits of HDR+. No Dolby Vision this time, just HDR+. And includes 3 discs, jam-packed with some great bonus features that I'll dive into at the end of this review, so stay tuned for that. Now before we dive into the review, I have to point out something about this release. There seems to be an issue with the HDR. I've heard some reports that some people have had issues with the skin tones being very red, almost beet red, depending on the scene. And from what I'm hearing, mainly Samsung players are at fault. I personally played it on my Sony X800M2 and also on my Panasonic DP9000, and I didn't have any issues. So let me know in the comments if you've experienced this issue, and if so, what player you're using. But even with this issue that seems to be sporadic, I'm still standing by the following comparison review. Alright, so let's get into it and compare the previous Blu-ray, which I don't have in front of me. I keep leaving these in the home theater room, against this new 4K UHD, and as usual I have screenshots so you can see the comparisons for yourself. So let's get to it. Right out of the gate, the improvements with this 4K are immediately obvious. The entire presentation with the higher definition is much cleaner, clearer, and razor sharp than honestly I've ever seen it before on any home media release, showing off all of Tom Savini's mayhem, gore effects, and all their bloody glory. The HDR10 Plus grading does an excellent job with the color reproduction, opening up the color gamut wider, allowing primary colors to come to life with truer, more faithful colors that also look more lifelike than the Blu-ray did, without ever sacrificing from the original source material. That really blast the screen with a lot of pop without any harsh or overly saturated colors, unlike the Blu-ray had. Blues look very blue and deep, and reds are also deeper and richer. Hues and highlights are increasingly fuller, giving way to better and more true colors to the image. A perfect reference point with this 4K is with the vastly improved black levels. The previous Blu-ray from Shout Factory had better black levels, but honestly were still pretty crushed and in some areas looking grayish instead of black. Not anymore. The HDR10 Plus grading does its magic with excellent inky deep blacks and increased shadow details and shading that gives the image much better delineation. A great example of this is at the beginning on the bridge at night. It looks fantastic without any colors or details being engulfed by the shadows, and that's throughout the film. Even in the darkest corners of the Sawyer complex underground looks incredibly more precise. I will say though, I did notice a couple areas that still came pretty close to crush, but honestly it never fully goes there, which leads me to believe it's inherited issues and not a problem with the transfer. Another reference point with the blacks, levels, and colors is when Lefty goes chainsaw shopping and he comes into the store and the owner doesn't have all the lights on. The details are also vastly improved, and all the beautiful carnage and mayhem in the Sawyer complex looks extraordinary, which is important since the last half of the film is all set at that location. With Tom Savini's best gore effects on full display, the production design is off the charts, with all the tunnels and objects placed everywhere, on the floor, ceiling, walls. You can now make out all the complex details and imperfections in the foreground and background with objects. The chainsaw blades have a nice shine to them, and you can clearly see the teeth of the saws. Facial close-ups reveals lines, imperfections, blemishes, facial hair, skin textures. They all look more lifelike. The grain structure is perfectly intact. Some areas do look heavier than others, but that's to be expected due to the lower budget of the film, so it's inherited, it's baked into the negative. but we have a beautiful filmic appearance that's pretty consistent throughout the film, unlike the previous Blu-ray that was very consistent from muddy to spiky grain levels. Vinegar Syndrome continues to deliver the best with their UHD titles, and this is no exception. And I'm still honestly awestruck by the vast improvements with this UHD, especially when comparing it to the Shout Factory Blu-ray. And I honestly can't see this looking any better than it does here. As for the audio, on the previous Blu-ray, the 5.1 track was good, but it wasn't great, and disliked by many of the fans with its new and in some areas different sound design. Vinegar Syndrome decided to forego that 5.1 mix and instead keep the release true to its theatrical experience with a DTS HD lossless stereo track sourced from the original audio mix. And it is very, very good track and feels much truer to the intentions of the film. Sound effects sound fantastic with some nice depth and weight. Even when the loudest chainsaws rip and roar away, it just sounds great. The film score is open and sounds terrific, and all the ambient and active sound effects deliver a sense of atmosphere and dimension throughout. Dialogue is clean and clear without any issues, and no problems with music or sound effects ever drowning out the dialogue, even with the loud chainsaw sounds. Alright, so my score for Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, I'm giving it an overall 5 out of 5 for video and audio, and ditch that aged Blu-ray, get rid of that sucker, and pick this up. But now I want to hear from you. Head over to the comments section and let me know, when you compare the differences here for yourself between the 4K and the Blu-ray, which format do you like better? Let me know over in the comments. Alright, well, if you've stuck around this long, then you're in for a real treat with this release. And that's with all the bonus content that's included and spread over 3 discs. It includes 3 audio commentary tracks from the cast, crew, and director Tobe Hooper, a new 2022 commentary featuring film historian and film critic Patrick Brumley, a 1 hour and 21 minute feature-length documentary that hasn't been seen since 2006 that includes interviews from the cast and crew remembering the making of the film and all the chaos that went behind the scenes. Next up is a jackpot of new 2022 interviews with Tom Savini, Carolyn Williams, and the rest of the cast and members of the crew relating their experiences filming the movie back in 1986. A new 2022 Remembering of featurette, 40 minutes worth of outtakes, and we got archival interviews with the special effects and makeup team, and 4 other interviews with the crew, including an interview with the stuntman. We also have 43 minutes of behind the scenes, an alternate opening, deleted scenes, teasers, trailers, and TV spots. Vinegar Syndrome always goes all out with their releases, and this is no exception. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending a few minutes here and comparing the 4K presentation of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. As always, keep doing your part in keeping physical media alive. I'll see you next time.